again, thank you very much. So I'm just going to jump right in. We've already introduced the folks that are with me, and both of the Dobbs girls.
I didn't know you.
What a terrible disposition they have. But Lenora Demoran, again, she's just an amazing lady, and she's keeps my affairs in order and keeps things going, and we argue quite a bit, but she usually wins out.
She's a keeper.
Yep, she is. And then William Sackett, a truly amazing man. If you don't know William, and just so many wonderful people here. Glad to see y'all. So I'm just going to jump right in real quick because I've got a lot to talk about, and I know we're not going to get through all of it. I'm just going to start off and tell you a little bit about our department, just to kind of give you a little insight on how we function and what we do. So the breakdown, manpower breakdown in our department is we have 190 employees. That's there's 134 sworn positions and 56 civilian positions, and that breaks down to 100 patrolmen, 32 criminal investigators, 24 communication folks, 5 community relations, 13 front desk and records, 3 finance, 7 garage, 2 animal control, and then 4 in the front office. So currently, with those officers and those civilians, we're answering between 2,200 and 2,500 calls every 7 days. And I'm going to tell y'all that's busy. It's absolutely busy. The patrol officers that are taking the majority of those reports are working 12-hour shifts. So there's not a lot of, even though I catch them standing around occasionally, there's not a lot of standing around time. They're constantly on the move. Out of that 2,200 to 2,500 calls that they answer every 7 days, this I'm truly proud of. 70% of those calls are officer initiated. That means the officer is finding it before it's called in by the public. 70%. That's a much higher than the national average, and I'm very proud of that. And all I can say is we just have some good folks working for us. They're very dedicated, and they get out and dig and find these things, and they don't have any problems getting out of their unit to deal with an issue regardless of the weather or regardless of anything else. And I am truly very proud of that, truly very blessed to have those folks working for me. Any idea on our annual budget? Does anybody have any idea what the police department's budget in Biloxi would be? Somebody take a wild guess.
$2 million.
Anybody else?
2.5 million.
It's between 17 and 19 million dollars yearly, depending on what capital outlay that we need to put in place.
Wow.
So it would be about a $15.5 million budget with just personnel alone, which is about 70% of our budget. So that people never realize, that always wakes people up when they realize that's what it costs to keep our community safe. So it's a struggle every year, because that is a lot of money. We have the biggest budget of all the departments in the city of Biloxi, and it's a handful. And then to justify what you need each year, becomes more difficult because certainly everybody's out for that money. So we have to be very articulate, very creative, and very honest about what we need to ourselves and to the mayor and the city council. So any questions about the department before I jump on to something else? Y'all feel free now. If you got a question, ask it.
Do you have to request that budget every year? I mean, you have to
You have to
work it like a grant, like you have to legitimize every
You have
penny.
to go in and show each line item and why we need it, why it's that much, and yeah, it's a struggle every year. But fortunately, we work for a lot of decent folks who understand that. Yes, ma'am.
So you have your new public safety complex on Porter, right?
Well, it's not new anymore, but yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and how many do you have other substations around town?
We do. None of them are manned 24 hours, but we have a substation at Edgewater Mall. It's really the predominant substation that we use. We did have a smaller substation down in the east part of Biloxi, but it just didn't work out for us. It just didn't keep somebody there all the time. We do have a small substation at Merritt Hospital, because we have so many calls there that we keep a small substation there, which is also not manned 24 hours a day, but it's manned when we can put an officer there.
And what kind of programs do you have for retaining your officers? Do you have a lot of flow?
Well, we have not, traditionally, we have not had a huge flow of officers wanting to leave us. Up till just a couple of years ago, the average yearly, how many years an officer had was about between 15 and 17 years. So most of them were veteran officers. But we experienced here recently, the last couple of years, we've experienced all those folks that we hired when the casinos came to town. There was a mass hiring, and all those folks have reached retirement age now. So they're getting out. You really can't blame a guy or a gal that wants to get out. They're still young enough, they can start another career. So there's really not a lot to keep them there once they reach retirement age. We've also been very fortunate in that probably now about a third of the officers that work in Biloxi actually came from some other city. They came to us either from Gulfport or Ocean Springs or Goshen, Pascagoula. We pick up officers from the county. We've been very fortunate to do that. Our benefits are a little bit better, not great amount better, but they're a little bit better. The pay may be a little bit better than some of the other agencies. And so we've been very fortunate that we can, throughout the country, there's a major issue with trying to hire policemen now. Excuse me. Young folks don't want to get into this business, and trying to hire minorities is a completely different animal to deal with, because you'll find that a lot of minorities do not want to get into police work. And I've had those long discussions with the black community, about why it's so difficult. And,
why don't they want to work for the police? Is it just the relations?
you're not going to make a fortune doing this, and it's dangerous work, and we know that, we see that, and a lot of times it's cultural things also, especially in the Asian community. The Asian folks are taught that they're gonna do big things and make a lot of money, and you can't blame people for wanting to do that. And so it's very difficult to hire young people, period, anymore, but especially minorities. Did I answer everybody's question? Anything else?
Yep.
All right. So I'm going to jump into the biggest problem that I deal with on a daily basis right now, and that is anybody?
Domestic.
Homeless?
Homeless.
Oh, homeless. Oh.
Yeah. So, and I'm going to try to break that down a little bit where it's more understandable, because the homeless issue is really not the issue. It's just everything falls under homeless. Everything has that title that it's a homeless issue. About probably at least a quarter of my day every day is spent dealing with something to do with that term, homeless. So what I have found, and look, I am no expert at all, but this is my opinion only. So if there's experts in the room, and I'm wrong, correct me, but this is my opinion from dealing with it on a daily basis and what I have found. So I'm going to break this homeless title down into several categories. And the first one is just down on your luck folks. That is truly the homeless people that we all think about. Down on your luck. And for whatever reason, multitude of reasons. But what we have found are those folks usually will take what's offered. There's a lot of support out there that people who are down on their luck can get relatively easily. You maybe have to lay your pride aside, but you can get these things. But what we find are those folks, when they're offered these benefits or whatever they need, they seem to get those. They seem to pick themselves up, and they don't remain homeless. You don't see them homeless for very long. There's a lot of help for them, and most of them accept that, get out of that situation they're in, and they move on. The biggest problem that we have, and I call it chronically homeless, and the majority of those are mentally ill, or they have a substance abuse problem, or both. And that is the problem that we deal with. If that situation was dealt with, I firmly believe that the homeless issue, at least here, I'm not talking about big cities, I'm just talking about here on the coast, that the homeless, I honestly believe we could control it. I feel like we could put the benefits in the right places and get folks the help that they need. But until this chronic homelessness, again, we're just using the term homelessness, but this chronic issue of mentally ill and folks who are addicted to whatever substance, till we can get that out of the way, that is going to be a burden that stands in our way. You know, here's folks that it doesn't matter what kind of resources we take to them, they just utilize the resources from day to day, and they're coming back for more tomorrow because we haven't dealt with that underlying problem, which is, again, a mental issue or drugs or both. And until we can find a way to deal with that, we're going to continue to have this problem, and everybody's going to continue to say, what a homeless issue we have, when in fact it's really not a homeless issue. I mean, most of these folks are homeless, but that is not the major issue that they have. And you know, we're working very, very hard to try to deal with that in Biloxi, and I know all along the coast it's the same way. So we've some of the steps that we've taken, we've formulated partnerships with the mental health associations and really anybody that has a stake or can bring some resources to the table. We meet regularly. We have trained our officers in critical incident training. I don't know if anybody knows, I'm sure you do, Lori, what critical incident training is for a policeman. It's expensive. The state covers it sometimes. But what it does is it allows us to train officers so that when they're out with someone who is experiencing some type of mental issue, that the officer himself can evaluate that and say, hey, you know, this person is really going through some traumatic experience right now, and they're able to take them at that point and to an expert, which is a single point of entry for us in Biloxi. It's Merit Health. Memorial Hospital is also a single point of entry. A single point of entry actually falls under state law, that there has to be a single point of entry where a CIT officer can take someone who's experiencing some problems. So the way it's supposed to work is once they're there, the single point of entry, then a psychologist or a psychiatrist is enlisted to determine what the next step is. Yeah, the big problem along the coast here is that there's not enough beds to put these folks in, and you know what I'm talking about. You know, I think honestly in Harrison County there was only a dozen beds, and that was for all of Harrison County. So you know, we could probably on a regular monthly basis we could probably fill up 50 or 60 beds with folks who need those services, whether they're going to go in and be evaluated and institutionalized, or whether they're going to be, some services are going to be provided to them that, you know, whether it's alcohol and drug rehab, or whether it's just a medication. A lot of times we run up on folks who it's just a medication issue that, you know, and I don't want this to be perceived the wrong way, but like a bipolar person, if they're given medication, they're perfectly fine. But once they seem to stabilize themselves and they begin to believe that they don't need the medication anymore and they stop taking it, well, within just a couple of weeks, they're going to be right back where they were at to begin with. So, you know, it's our philosophy that we not only need somewhere for these folks to be evaluated regularly, but there needs to be a support system in place that can deal with them. If not, we're going to continue to deal with them day after day after day. We're going to continue to throw resources at them that are just really just, I hate to say it, but it's just going to be a waste, because that's what happens. We just throw those resources hoping we're trying to help them and honestly, it makes a lot of us feel better. You know, nobody wants to see somebody down on their luck and down and out. And, so we're constantly doing that. So regardless of how you feel about it, I'm just telling you that their evaluation needs to take place, and that evaluation, whatever the outcome is, that needs to be maintained for that person until we've got them stabilized. And in some cases, we found family members out of state that would come down and pick up their loved ones and be responsible for them. You know, but you'd be surprised at the folks that do not want to be responsible for their loved ones. I personally would feel an obligation. You know, even if it was a distant relative, I would feel that obligation. And this is kind of mine to deal with, but not everybody feels that way. So moving on from chronically homeless, we have the opportunist. And so the opportunist, they can wear a lot of boots. You They seem to, wherever the resources are at, the opportunist is there. They more than likely are not homeless and probably are making a good living. But if there are resources that are offered for free, there's a segment that's going to jump in and take those resources, whether it be a lunch at a local feedery, or whether it's a tent and sleeping bags. If they're free, they're going to step in and get them. And the majority of these folks that are offering these resources are not going to ask those questions. They don't feel like they should ask those questions. And I'm not going to second guess them there. But the opportunists, what they do is they make it very difficult for the folks providing these services to continue to provide them, because in my estimation, probably half of the services that are rendered every day probably aren't really going to that group that we call homeless. There's other folks that are grabbing those things up. It's almost criminal, to be honest with you, in my opinion, but it's there's no way to, right now, there's no way to police that I know of. And then the last group, and look, you can break, again, this is my opinion, you can break this thing down into a half a dozen groups if you want to. But the last group that I seriously know are there, and that's the professional shyster. Right?
Con men.
Con men. They are absolutely there. They're working every day. A big majority of them already have an income, whether it's a retirement or whether they have a job on the side, but they have an income. And then they're making somewhere, it's difficult to say, but somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000 a year begging, right? So, and that's all tax-free money, right? So they can just put their pride aside and beg. You can
Like at the corner, the interstate, those people?
Absolutely, yeah. We have
Not everybody,
right.
but
Yes, ma'am.
So what, I know you can't give me an exact number, but what do you think is the percentage of the people you see at the corner of the ramp, at the interstate or whatever, begging for money? How many of them do you really think are in real need of money for a job?
Well, I think all of them believe they're in need of your money, but actually probably more like there's probably a good 10 or 15%, maybe higher than that absolutely don't need your money. It's just a way for them to get money. It's a living.
So then you think, so with those numbers, you're saying the majority of them actually could use a $20 bill. Is that what you're saying? I always feel
Right.
guilty, and I give all of them money, and then I have a couple of people in my life that say that I'm stupid for doing that. But I just feel like, in my mind, if you're going to bring yourself down to that level to ask somebody else for money or hold up a sign, then you really need that $20 more than me, because I can assure you, it would take a lot of hardship for me to stand on the street all day watching cars drive by me holding up a
Right.
sign.
Well, you're a person of morals and principle, and not everyone is that way. I assure you, they have no problems taking your money if you'll offer it. The true trick is to determine who really needs it, who doesn't, and you can't do that with somebody standing on the corner. Well, the reality of it is, my religion is, once I give it to them, I'm giving it to them in faith, good faith. And so it's really not up to me after that. But as a policeman, it is up to me, because I know that they're out there doing this. We stopped one guy, it's been a couple of years ago, and I just asked him to be honest with me, and I really believe he was completely honest with me. I said, what do you have to make out here every day for you to feel right? And he said, brother, if I leave here without $500 in my pocket, he said, I'm upset.
Every day?
Every day. So he's probably working 3 to 4 or 5 days a week.
Well, I changed what I said before.
Well,
You may see me on the street.
yeah, hey, it's a good living if you can put your pride aside. If you have that kind of pride, you put it aside. It's a heck of a good living. Lenora hears this every day from us. She deals with it every day, and yesterday afternoon when I was leaving, I saw that a guy had approached her at her car, and I think it was all she could do to stop from giving him money, and even told me, "Did you not? That man, it really got to me. That guy really got to my heart." Well, that's what they're betting on, that they're going to get to you.
wow.
But they always approach me. Always.
Yeah, I know.
Never very much.
Yeah, well, and look,
It's like I'm wearing a sign on the back of my
Yeah, me too, Heather. I
women,
get that.
women and younger folks, man, those are the ducks. Those are the ones you go for, because those are the ones you're gonna get the money out of usually the quickest. Yes, ma'am.
I had brought it up before to the Board of Aldermen. I was interested in some programs in other cities and even spoke to the mayor of Albuquerque. They have a work program whereby they partner, well, let's say like the Back Bay Mission or some other type of nonprofit. They supply maybe a van, they allocate, say, $15,000 a year or something low, and it's run through the nonprofit.
Right.
But that man would go around and ask homeless people in the morning, who wants to work today for $8 or $10 an hour for 5 hours? And they give them an orange vest and, a rake or a blower, and they do some minimal tasks, just
Right.
cleaning up the streets, kind of adjunct to public works, but light unskilled work. And then they make sure they go to maybe Where Does My Help and have a lunch, and then they kind of help them monitor if they've lost their social security card,
Right.
that kind of thing. And so the people go and they cash that check every day. And it was wonderful. It's a great film. I highly recommend that. It didn't really get off the ground here, but I could see that being useful for people who really want to work and get some cash in their pockets, and it cuts down on the panhandling, and it puts them into that safety net of like Homeless Coalition and lots of other groups that are out there that then could help them with additional services if they needed it. Are you familiar with that program?
I am. I've listened to Mr. Barry quite a few times.
And
Yes, and I don't disagree that because we're in the process of putting together a work program in Biloxi now. We're going to see how that works. We work under the Sarasota model. That seems to work better for us. We work under that model, but again, and this is why I broke this down this way. Those folks that you're talking about, the down on the luck folks will accept that job. They'll be ready to go make money. The chronically homeless, the ones that are mentally ill, and the ones that have it, they are absolutely not going to do it. That's why I started this off with that group needs to be dealt with. We need to find a way to deal with them separately from our homeless issue. Now, there's going to be a lot of people that can argue with me about that, but I'm telling you, if somebody wants to work, they'll work. This group of folks here, the ones that cause us the biggest issues, are
They
not
don't
going
wanna
to
work.
Some of them can't work. They just don't have the mentality to work.
You're talking about the chronic
Chronically
ones,
homeless.
okay. got it.
So we have tried to do that with old fines. We've allowed them, we will give you work, to pay off these fines. It was an absolute flop for us. We could not get anyone to show up to work, and if they did show up to work, we couldn't get them to work. So I don't think paying off fines is gonna work. Maybe actual cash money, make it some money. That may be a different animal. But we're gonna find out here shortly. We've
well,
had
the
at
state
least,
keeps cutting their mental health budget, Department of Mental Health, and that's just,
well, that is the issue.
they're
That
closing
is the
hospitals,
major issue.
closing all the institutions, and just throwing people out on the streets and causing a burden for the localities and the police.
Well, and that is exactly the reason this group is there, is because it takes money, and that's just not there. So everybody's jumping through hoops trying to find, other ways to deal with this, but it's gonna come down eventually to needing money. Y'all, have I bored you with that? With the homeless? Any other
No.
questions about that? And then again, this is my opinion, y'all. Any other questions about the homeless or anything you're wondering about? All right, let me, and I guess most of you probably have heard that the city of Biloxi was under an ACLU agreement. Has anybody heard that? All right, so
No.
what the agreement consists of is a few years ago, the ACLU throughout the country started looking at cities and determining maybe that some of the cities were not doing what they thought was legal. And so they actually sued the city of Biloxi and said that we were running a debtor's prison. And,
Interesting.
yeah, and so we certainly said, well, we don't think that's true. We don't think we're running a debtor's prison. And they sued me and said
Personally?
Personally, and said, yes, you are the chief of police and you are the executive officer of the court. And I never heard of such a thing. I'm from the executive branch of government, but the court is the judicial branch of government. And so I don't know what you're talking about. And so they produced a Mississippi statute that basically, so it doesn't basically say, it says that the chief of police is the executive officer of the court. But what it's referring to is someone from the executive branch, the head of the executive branch, having the authority to put someone in the courtroom that can affect an arrest. The judicial branch can't make arrests. So they're talking about a bailiff. That's what the law says. You have the authority to put a bailiff in the court. But rather than try to argue that down, we reached an agreement with them, a 3-year agreement, which just recently came to an end. And that agreement was very difficult for us to deal with, but I think we did the very best that we could with it. And basically what it said was that no one can be incarcerated on a misdemeanor charge, no one, without first having an indigency hearing. All right, so I can't tell you the difficulty in having an indigency hearing on somebody that you pick up in the middle of the night on whatever misdemeanor charge it is. You bring them in, they have got to go before a judge, and the judge has to say, well, they're either indigent or they're not. If they're not indigent, then we can give them a bond and they can make bond and leave. If they are indigent, we have to let them go until there's a hearing. And that has just recently ended. And where that caused us problems was we may have a person that this has happened, that we arrest 5 or 6 times in the same day for the same charge, because we bring them down, book them in. We can't have an indigency hearing that quick, and so they would just walk out the door on an OR bond and just go right back to whatever problem they were caused and cause that problem, to arrest them, bring them back in. So it's been very difficult to deal with, but like I said, that has ended. And we believe that's going to help us also. Now we're reformulating the way we're doing things. We certainly we want to do what's legal and what's right, so we're reformulating some things in Biloxi. Hopefully that's going to help us with, I honestly believe, with our homeless issue.
And it's a 3-year agreement?
It was a 3-year agreement. We went through the full 3 years. All right, so I was going to touch on community relations unless there's any other questions. Well, I have recently found out, after the murder of Robert McKeithen, very fine policeman. We didn't realize, we thought we had community support. We were pretty sure that we did. But after Robert's death, we found that we were unbelievable community support, not just in the city of Biloxi, but all over the coast, all the cities around us, all the agencies around us, all the businesses, with just a few exceptions. There were just a few knuckleheads that had some very negative things to say, but other than that, it was amazing to me the amount of community support that we had. As you had mentioned earlier, I've been a board member for the Regional Organized Crime Information Center for almost a dozen years now. And so I've had an opportunity to go all over the country and with that organization on their dime and get a look at how policemen are viewed in other cities and other parts of the country. And I'm here to tell you, we are unique here. We are unique. Somebody gets a ticket, they get a ticket, they don't like it, but they don't hate a policeman for it. In other parts of the country, it is absolutely not that way. They do not have the support of the community. They do not have the support of their businesses. Some of them don't even have support within their own government. So I feel very, very fortunate here. And all that just came home to me. I asked for help, and a whole lot of help I didn't ask for that just came. They were there for us. The community stood behind us, and so I appreciate that very much. And again, feel very blessed to live in a community like that. And it was the same with race relations. The first folks to come forward, some of the first folks to come forward with us, was the Biloxi Ecumenical, I hope I pronounced that right, Ecumenical group. They stepped forward, which was a group of black ministers. They were the first ones to step in, or one of the first ones to step in to see how they could help. And other places in the country, you don't have that either. And we have that here. I'm sure we have some minor race issues, but from what I have seen, other places, man, we are hands and feet above everybody else, and we should be very proud of that. I know all of my folks have a new outlook on that, you know, because you listen to the national media, the whole country, excuse me, is going to hell in a handbasket. But that is just not here. It is not here.
Why do you think that is?
You know, I don't have any idea.
I don't either.
We have been defended repeatedly over and over. When I thought that, you know, we would probably not be defended, we were defended by the black community, and they just really stood up for us and were right there for us, and it's amazing to me.
So unique, you're talking Mississippi Gulf Coast or Biloxi, Ocean
I'm
Springs?
talking about the Mississippi. I'm pretty much the state of Mississippi, and I can't speak for North Mississippi. I don't know a lot about North Mississippi, but certainly
Maybe Jackson on down?
South Mississippi.
Not including Jackson, but maybe down south.
I don't know, but I'm just telling you that unbelievable support, right there for us. Race was not an issue at all. Anything that I saw.
Do you do outreach programs with like Boys and Girls Club or other
We
Black
do.
Ministers Alliances,
We do.
things like that?
Yeah, we do. The Black Ministers in Biloxi, we meet probably a couple times a year. You know, we go to either one of their board meetings or we have lunch together or something. And you know, I've had them defend us. And you know, we've opened up to them about the problem with hiring minorities, and they understand that, and have even tried themselves to bring those minorities to us, in which we've had some success with them. We've had more success with female officers for whatever reason. We've really hired a lot of female officers, and there's been they seem to there was one test that we gave. We actually had more female officers, candidates there than we did male. That's never happened before. So I can't explain that either, because when I ask on the national board, when I ask, you know, is everybody seeing that? The other people in Mississippi weren't seeing that. So that seems to be a coastal thing there. You know, I don't know why. I'm
More women.
proud of it. More women.
Black and white or just?
Black and white. More white females, but still black and white. And then I was going to touch on media relations. Am I running y'all late?
No, we're doing fine. You got 10 minutes.
All right. Oh.
Unless you want to eat and stop.
No. So media relations, I was very proud of the media, and I know that's a difficult thing for a police chief to say because we're usually at odds with each other. But I'm here to tell you, after Robert's murder, the media stepped up. They were positive. With the exception of one national media group who was not so positive, but the local media just kind of overran them. And you know, there was anything that we needed, they did it. Before they ran a story, they would call us and say, you know, is this accurate? Do you think this is okay? So I just really,
Wow.
we are very fortunate to have the media outlets that we have here. They're not out to get us all the time. They're there to tell the news and to tell the truth, and they're going to do that. But you know, taking that into context and realizing that they have a job to do too, I was very proud of them. And when I say local media, I'm talking about from Louisiana and Alabama that came over that were just very decent to us. And at one point, I had a national media person that was getting in my face with some garbage, and these two media folks, not from here, but from a neighboring state, just stepped in front of her and just cut her off.
Ooh, great.
And started asking positive questions. And it really blew my mind. I did not expect that.
Cool.
And so I have a newfound respect. I'll always make a point to get along with the media, but I have a newfound respect for our local media. They are a good bunch of folks. They're going to tell it like it is, but they are a good bunch of folks. And that's really all we want. We make a mistake. We made a mistake. But if we didn't, I don't want it to be aired that we did. And they're very, very good to us there about that.
And Chief, if I can say, you also have a pretty good in-house media PR team
In
as well.
spite of that, we're still doing it.
I'm curious about how you keep the morale up in your department. I know that I might have interrupted your stream.
No, I'm ready.
Because I've noticed several departments on the coast have a morale problem. There's just,
Well, I can't speak for everybody else. I can just tell you what we do. And hey, we have morale problems too. There are folks that get down and out, but, and some of that is the nature of the business.
right,
This job has really, really changed. Mary can tell you that. It has really changed over the last 15 or 20 years. It is not the same animal it was at one time. But what we do, we just, at least I try, and I know that our command staff does, we try to be as honest and upfront with everybody as we can. Certainly there are things sometimes that they find out about after the fact, and that usually causes some problems. But we try to be upfront, honest. We try to let them know ahead of time, this is what's coming. If there are, budget is always a negative time for everybody. If there's issues in the budget that are going to affect everyone, it's better to get that out in the open. Just tell it like it is, and let the chips fall where they may. And I honestly believe that I know I would, and I think that most of the officers appreciate that. Just knowing up front, that this is how it is. And then you also want them to know that you're always pulling for them. They don't expect miracles, and they don't expect anything that they don't deserve, but they do expect to be
that you got their back.
and to be taken care of. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's with any business. It just seems to be more predominant in the police business because cops stand out. It's that authority thing that they have, which kind of makes them puts them in the limelight from time to time.
Chief,
Yes,
I have a
ma'am.
question about shoplifting.
Who?
Shoplifting.
Oh, shoplifting.
The way misdemeanors are now, and the way felonies are now, the way it was a few years ago, how has that impacted the coast?
Well, we get, I'm not real sure how to answer that. We get our fair share of shoplifters. We do our best to prosecute them. Certainly if it's a felony charge, we do our best to prosecute them because that just makes the price for all the goods go up, and we as a community have to pay that price. I know over in DeIberville, they had a pretty good problem there, because they have so many stores there now. I think they got a federal grant, maybe it was a state grant to help them out with that, and it was a big deal for them. Usually if we have a shoplifter, it's usually at the mall, one of the stores like that. And we just prosecute, whatever the law will allow us to do. I probably didn't answer your question to the fullest, but
Do you see the state legislature changing that at all?
I have no idea. They may, they very well could. They could come in and change it, especially if there's enough businesses that raise Cain about it. Yes, ma'am.
Have you guys implemented any additional security protocols for like the station or your officers since the shooting?
Actually, before the shooting, we had put some safety protocols in place. We had cubicalized the front desk, so when someone comes in, they have to go into a cubicle in order to talk to someone. And we had blocked off the upstairs access. At one time, you could just walk up. So we had done all those things. And we had just put in brand new cameras around the station, which, I hate to say it this way, but they really paid off
Yeah.
for us. So everything's very clear for us. But I really don't know what else we could do other than reiterate to the officers to be vigilant, which we've done. And then, be there to support them. You can imagine that was we lost a few. We had a few that decided after a month or so, that they probably wanted to go ahead and retire. They were retirement age. We didn't have anyone just up and quit and leave. We didn't have any of that nonsense, but we did have a couple that were that age and felt like, and I think they probably already had that, in their mind to leave anyway.
Yeah.
But as far as, in that particular case, there was, I would have, and I can't get into that, but I would have acted and probably done the same thing that Robert did. I can't see that I would have changed anything. The way he dealt with that, it was one of those things that there wasn't anything Robert could have done differently.
Nash, the attention, the number of officers that came to Biloxi, wow.
Well, wasn't that something? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was remarkable to us. you know, there's an officer down page that you can go to, and every day if there's an officer that's shot somewhere in the United States or killed in the United States.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we get that on a daily basis. So
How about that?
many departments, and ours is one that's done this for probably the last 10 years. We send a condolence card to that agency the following day. That takes place and has with us for years. And I think most of the, well, I can tell you this. Lenore and I have sorted through close to 800 condolence cards that have come from other agencies and then some businesses and some regular, just regular folks. About 800 that we're still in the process of trying to sort through and answer.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You're answering all of them too?
We're answering every one of them. We're going to sign every one of them.
How about that?
Yeah. So I guess we're probably down about half, maybe a little over half now.
That's a big job, Lenora.
And then, money, we had to set up an account for Miss McKeithen because there was so much money coming in just from all over the United States. Bits and pieces, $25, $1,000.
So she's gonna be okay?
So we believe she'll be okay. And so we immediately set up an account and funneled that money into the account. And then other goods and services, she didn't have to pay for anything with Robert. Everything was paid for.
Like the ceremony and the funeral?
Everything was paid for. So, we're very, 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 very appreciative of that. But, so real quick, if there's any other questions on that.
No, sir.
All right, real quick, I'm just going to touch on the NOLA cameras. Do we have time? Do we have
Maybe a minute, yeah.
Okay. The NOLA camera system, anybody familiar with NOLA? Right?
Yeah.
It's a program that started in New Orleans. It's discounted cameras, and you can put them up anywhere in the city. So we now have 35 that aren't up yet, are about to go up, and then we have quite a few businesses, including the hospitals and a few of the other businesses around town that want to buy into the NOLA camera system.
What do you mean?
So we'll have a real-time crime center at the PD.
Wow.
And so everything records to the cloud. The following day, there's no one that's going to sit and look at those right now, but the following day, we'll look at our stats. If there was burglaries in this part of town or crimes in this part of town, we can go pull those cameras up, take a look, and see if we can get a suspect from that. The key thing is that they're so cheap. The cameras themselves, for a pan-tilt zoom, if you're familiar with cameras, is about $300, which is probably a half or third of what it would usually cost for that camera. And then that's a $240 a year fee to maintain each camera. And so, for some of the businesses, it is well worth that. The only issue we have is that the camera has to face a public access. It can't be like somebody's pool in their backyard or any of that. It has to be public access. And so within the next year, we hope to really make some strides with crime reduction because of this NOLA camera system. The only other place it's going on right now in Mississippi is in Natchez.
Really?
And I've talked to the chief there. He and I are good friends, and he is very candid and honest with me about it, about how well it has worked for them. And so we're on board. The first cameras are going up. The first one will be at City Hall, then the crosswalks. There'll be some cameras on the crosswalks.
When are they gonna go up?
Here within the next couple of weeks.
Wow.
Yep. And so then, but we have 35 budgeted this year. That's just for the department. And then we know that there's probably another 25 or 30 right now, people who are interested that are going to throw those cameras up.
Do you have to physically go to the camera in order to download?
Nope, it downloads to the cloud and in the real-time crime center. They can just go in the morning. They're going to get something from CID telling them, hey, the burglaries were here, larcenies were here, we had this going on here, and they'll be able to go directly to those cameras, pull them up, and see if there's any evidence there.
How about that?
And we've talked to, real quick, we've talked to the, briefly, we talked to the lady with the rehabilitative services, Mississippi Rehabilitative Services, and she's, we're in conversations with them now about, in the future, hiring some folks with disabilities to put in that real-time crime center that can view those cameras, and we'll probably start off with key times of the day, and then we will move from there into hopefully a 24-hour camera monitoring system is what we hope to get there in 4 or 5 years from now. Y'all, I hope I haven't held you up. I
No, you
appreciate it very
haven't.
much.
Everybody, please give him a hand.
short.
I did
length of
not
time.
know about the camera system. That's really interesting.
Well, thank you. Also at the back, before you leave now, there's some coasters back there. Please get you some. We don't want to take any of those
Some
back
what?
with us now.
Coasters?
I appreciate you